Well, this is a podcast about exceptional people, and I've got to say, of any guest I've ever had on, nothing has been more exceptional than the fact that you have your 9th kid on the way. Dude, you are multiplying and replenishing the earth as well as anybody I know.
I figured I could really, take one commandment and just do one of them really good, and so that's one of the commandments, and I think I'm doing a good job.
I think you've got some genius behind it, because if you only have 1 or 2 kids, if one of them's a screw up, like half your kids are a screw up at that point, right? But if you got 9, it's like, we lost 1 or 2 along the way, but 7 of them, do good things with their life, then I guess you feel pretty good about yourself. So
yeah, some people focus on their 401k. Mine is 401 kids. And so
well, at least you'll have people to take care of you, man. It's pretty awesome, actually. It's very respectable and commendable, dude. As a guy who has no kids and we're only about 2 years apart, I can appreciate the life that you've chosen. And you really just do. You are a mover, man. Every time I see you, you've got a ton of stuff going on. You're one of the happiest people I know. So it's a pleasure to sit down with you. You played 5 years in the NFL. That's probably what you're most well known for. But you seems like you're always in the public eye. You just got a knack for that. So you ran for political office. And what's been your favorite, of all the things you've done since football, what's been the thing that's been the most fun or most exciting for you?
Since football, I've got to say getting out in the real world and just getting my butt kicked has been, it's just the lessons that I've gotten from it and the people I've met and the different opportunities I've had it's been probably the most rewarding outside of obviously the family. So
yeah. Well, let's back up your story a little bit, because it's a really good story. You grew up in California, Tongan born family. Correct. Give us a little bit about, we've talked about this before at lunch one time, but you had a pretty rough area you lived in growing up, and tell us what your childhood was like.
So the funny thing about my childhood is you don't realize it was rough until you leave it. So growing up, I didn't realize those experiences were rough until you move to somewhere like Utah. So I was born in Los Angeles, lived there till I was almost 12. And I mean, I went to 6 elementary schools, 4 junior highs, and you would think I was in the military, but I wasn't. It was the circumstance I grew up where you get evicted and, different things that your family went through, but you didn't realize the magnitude of it until you move to somewhere like Utah, and you get around an area where it's kind of a bubble, and then now I've lived in the same house for 10 years. Before that, I don't think I lived in the same house for more than 2-3 years.
Give us an idea, like a story maybe that exemplifies how rough it was, some of those areas you grew up in.
Shoot, we lived in Crenshaw off of Imperial Highway in Berendo. I remember we're getting out of the car with our groceries, and a guy pulls up on a bike, drops his bike, runs through the house, and this car pulls up, jumps out of the car, chase him through our house.
Through your house.
Through our house. And you just kind of stand there like, and they're chasing him through the house, and next thing you know, the dude's dead in the alley behind our house. And you're just like, I mean, it was what it was, And you see it in the movies, but when you grow up and it happens, you're just kind of like, hey, that was my childhood.
So when you moved to Utah, was just this like Pleasantville experience or what? Like,
I ain't never seen so many white people in my life, man. It was, it was different, but, per religion, because, the Mormon faith here in, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Utah. It felt like kind of that bubble, and you kind of like, man, yeah, it was pretty bad where we grew up.
So did you fit in right away, or was it kind of tough to fit in? Because you came from such a different background, right, to come to Utah?
The Polynesians, you fit in automatically. Polynesians kind of have that tight knit, it takes a village mentality. So there was cousins here already. There was a bunch of Polynesians already in West Valley. That's where we first moved to. And I remember moving from Inglewood, Lenox, Hawthorne, Crenshaw to West Valley, and was like, oh man, so nice here. And then I moved from West Valley to Cottonwood Heights. I'm like, West Valley's a little ghetto.
One of my favorite jokes that I do a lot of, I used to do stand-up comedy at Wise Guys, was out in West Valley, you know, and one of these comics would tell this joke, and he's like, yeah, I got here from California. I was just walking around. I went to the mall over here. That's the
Valley Fair.
Yeah, but he goes, oh yeah, Welfare Mall.
Oh man,
it's kind of messed up, but West Valley. It really isn't too bad. I grew up in Taylorsville, so kind of a similar place. It's like the same place. I lived
there for a little bit.
You don't realize it's a little bit ghetto till you leave or whatever, but it's really not. At the same time, there's so many nice areas out there compared to like other states.
I'll tell you what. I went to Eisenhower Junior High in 8th grade. And the apartments we lived in, Granada Apartments, right off of Redwood and 45 or 47. And we had a cop die on the 2nd floor. Like, you walk by the door to go up to our apartment, and that apartment door that you walk by, he knocked on it, and the guy inside shot through the door and killed him. It was like around 93, I believe. And so, dude, ghetto is everywhere. I don't care where. Even in the rich neighborhood, there's ghetto. So it is what it is.
Well, one thing I remember about high school, you played at Brighton. You guys, I watched you your senior year of high school, and my Nate Sunloff was a buddy of mine. He ended up playing at Southern Utah, and I was a sophomore, and he was a senior. That was when you were a senior. And dude, I remember going to the All-Star game, like the senior game, All-Star game, and you were running, I think it was a punt back. And dude, I swear he missed you 3 times on the same play. And it was so funny. I literally remember thinking, I've never seen a better football player in my entire life. That was you, dude. I was just like, that dude is so good. And then I remember you ended up going to BYU, and I was so excited because I'm like, that's that dude that no one could tackle. But walk us through a little bit your experience, because you ended up at BYU, but you grew up a Utah fan. Your brother went to the U.
Right.
So how did you end up going to BYU?
So growing up in LA, you kind of cheering for SC. Mm-hmm. But then we moved to Utah. My older brother's playing at the U, and now you're a Ute. And so cheering for the Utes my whole life, or not my whole life, but just, 6 years I'm a Ute fan. Yeah, I didn't really cheer for really any other colleges. And during those 6 years, you hate BYU. You know, you're just like, I don't care for BYU. I'm a Ute, you know. And as I was going through the recruiting process, I went to the recruiting trip to the U, went skiing for the first time in my life. It was sweet. I committed to Coach Mack. He was like Uncle Mac back then. And so I always went to the U of U camps, and I'd go to the BYU camps with my U of U jacket on.
You were that guy?
I was that punk kid. I kid you not. I sit back and think, and I think maybe, some people might still think I'm a punk, but I was that punk kid that would go to BYU in a U of U outfit. And then my uncle, who was a big-time BYU fan, still is, he was real close with the coaches at BYU. He had convinced my mom for me to take the trip. Just take a trip there. I mean, it's a free trip. You just go have dinner, go snowmobiling. It's like, all right, whatever. So we take the recruiting trip. Kalani Sitaki, who's the head coach at BYU.
Was the head...
Kalani, he's the head coach right now.
Yeah.
So he was the head coach of BYU right now, and Justin Enna, who's the linebacker coach at the U, were my hosts.
At BYU.
At BYU for my recruiting trip. And so I go on the recruiting. It was great, hang out with the guys, get the free dinner, and got to go snowmobiling. That was pretty fun. And then it was like sitting down meeting with LaVell, and it was like, yeah, this is cool. This is fun.
Was that the first time you'd met LaVell?
Yes.
Okay.
Like really actually met him.
Yeah.
You walk by him here and there at the camps, and met him at the camp, but sit down, have dinner, go through the whole recruiting process. And he was awesome. LaVell he was one of a kind. And just said, thank you. It was a good trip. Appreciate it. And so we walk out the door, and as I walk out of his office, my mom and dad are with me. We walk out, and my mom looks at me, she's like, go back and tell him you're coming. And I was like, what? Tongan moms, you don't mess with Tongan moms. And she's like, don't make me tell you again. I was like, so I go and knock on the door, and he's like, yeah? He's like, my mom wanted me to tell you I'm coming. And he's just like, oh. And so...
That's how you ended up at BYU?
Yeah, the worst was calling Coach Mack.
Oh, how did that go? He was such a nice guy too.
To this day, he still says the same thing. I call him up. He's like, Coach Mac, I had to tell you, my mom told me I have to go to BYU.
Put it on your mom?
Yeah.
As you should.
But it was her.
Yeah, it was on your mom. So.
And he's just like, yeah, he just told me how much he loved me. And he had a few choice words, but he's still my dude to this day. I love that dude.
I love that, man. Well, so you ended up playing your freshman year, had a really good freshman year at BYU under LaVell. And then you actually ended up getting suspended for the honor code. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit what happened.
So freshman year, the idea was, and back then you didn't go on a mission till you're 19. Mm-hmm. So my goal was go do everything I can to make a name for myself my first year and then go on a mission. And then I get out there, we go play Alabama. Very first game, my very first college game from...
I remember watching it. Sean Alexander scored like 20
touchdowns.
Yeah. It was more like, I think it was 4 or 5. But
yeah, I think he had 5.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And so the very first part of the game, Ronnie Jenkins is the man. Mm-hmm. He's balling out. He starts cramping up. Then they put in Will Snowden, and he started cramping up. And then they put in Tyrone Brown. By halftime, I still haven't gotten the game. You know, I got into camp and I was like 6th string tailback. By Alabama, I think only 2 true freshmen dressed that game. Not like nowadays where all true freshmen are balling. Like back then, hardly any true freshmen played. And so me and an old lineman actually dressed, Hanale Vincent and myself. But halftime, no one played. And then I got to play at the second half. I ended up very first couple times, I got a touchdown. And it just kind of springboarded my freshman year. Mm-hmm. And so everything was kind of going in accordance to plan where I'm going to make a name for myself and then go on my mission. Well, by the end of the year, I'm 2nd string. I'm right behind Ronnie Jenkins. By the bowl game that year, Ronnie Jenkins gets expelled. He's done. And so I'm starting tailback, true freshman, bowl game, at the bowl game. And so now the question after the game was, are you going to stay and play? Or are you going to go on your mission? And so I decided I was going to stay and play around February, March. Instead of going on my mission in June, I was just going to stay and play. By July, I get kicked out of school. And so it was one of those things that really woke me up on what was more important in life. And so...
How does that work? Like, did you confess something to your bishop, or did they find out? Or how does, just for people that aren't familiar with kind of how the honor code works, or who even that are, but
so
I'm not sure how
it's at that time, so BYU has the honor code. Mm-hmm. You aren't allowed to have premarital sex until you're, until you're married. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to do any of that stuff, drink, smoke, any of those things you can get in trouble for. So my girlfriend at the time got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so I actually didn't go say anything. I didn't tell no one. Someone, from what I understood, was someone in her family called BYU. So they called me in, and it wasn't something at that time I felt comfortable lying about this not being my son.
Yeah.
So
well, and your son now he's on a mission right now,
he's serving an LDS mission.
Where's he at?
Santiago, Chile.
That's awesome.
Not LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So he's serving a mission now. He's doing great. His mom's doing awesome, and so
that's pretty awesome.
And he'll be at BYU when he comes back from his mission.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool.
No, that's actually really cool. Well, so were you bitter, or were you like, screw BYU, I'm done with them?
Yeah, I was bitter. I was supposed to be out for a year, and I was bitter for a while, and then I went to come back, and they wouldn't let me back in. So I had to sit out a whole nother year.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually only supposed to be a semester or 2. And then I was going to come back for the following winter.
Well, so you went down to Dixie, right?
No, I was actually at UVSC, also known as UVU now.
Okay.
And I was going to come back after that. And then they said, no, we don't feel like you've grown up yet. And
really?
So you still have things that you need to clean up and get your life in order. And so I was like, Because I had a red shirt to spare.
Got it.
So I still had 3 years to play. And I don't know. Well, and then around this time, I met my wife, who I was dating. And so I decided I was going to go to Dixie. USC came after me, NC State, because of Norm Chow, first at NC State, then when he went to USC, who was the offensive coordinator at that time. And so, but I met my wife at the time, and we were dating, and there was just something about going back and finishing what I started at BYU and being with my wife, who I was just dating at the time. And so I made that decision to go to Dixie, kind of get things back in order, get my life back in order, and came back, married my wife, and went back to BYU.
Well, and I think, not to be skipped over, but you set the record for college football that year for receiving yards at Dixie, I believe. I read.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you had like a crazy year.
Yeah, well,
so people were excited. When you decided to come back to BYU, I just remember people were excited about that.
You go play against Alabama, and then you go play junior college, and it was... Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun.
So when you went back, LaVell was no longer there. Croton was there, right?
Correct.
So give us a couple ideas. Give me a story or two about LaVell, what made him so special as a coach. I mean, I think everybody knows he's a special human being, but give us an example of something he did that just stands out to you.
Two things I think really stood out real quickly was, one, he was kind of the epitome of you don't care how much they know till you know how much they care. And you just knew he cared about you. You knew he had your back. You knew he would do anything he could for you. And if he couldn't, then he couldn't. But you knew that about him. And he wasn't one of those coaches that just faked it. You knew that about LaVell. He was one of those guys. The second thing is, he's someone that looking back at it, I love that he let his coaches coach.
And what do you mean by that?
He wasn't someone that would get into every little thing all the other coaches did. Like, you rarely got any coaching tips from him. That everything was coached through his coaches.
That's probably why his tree became so great. All the coaches that came through him, right? From Holmgren to Andy Reid, who you played for with the Eagles, and so many others.
He just knew how to develop his coaches and let his coaches coach. And so it was that's something, looking back, I can totally respect. And you never felt like he was trying to get one over on you. Like, he was just straight with you. I mean, it was like talking to your bishop every time you met with him. And most of my situations were like having to talk to your bishop. And so
you're a very fertile human. At least you were smart enough to get married when you went back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that's awesome. So when you went back in 2001, you had a game. I know the BYU-Utah game's coming up. It's kind of exciting this year. But you had a game, I think it was the BYU-Utah game. You had your appendix out like the week of the game or something, and you ended up... Tell us what happened.
The best part was how mean my wife was to me at the time. So me and my wife are married. My wife is an All-American volleyball player. She's 6'2", I'm 5'9". She gets back into town from a tournament. She went out for a tournament. Me and another husband, we go pick up our wives. They're both playing on the volleyball team. He goes and grabs her bags, and I'm hurting. And I'm thinking it's just bad gas. And I'm just like, dang, it's just not feeling right. I've never heard of appendicitis or whatever that is. And she's just kind of pissed off at me, like, what the heck? Can't even carry my bags. And I'm just kind of like, just hurting. Anyways, we get back to the house. She has a meeting that night. They have a little fireside or whatnot. And I'm in the tub, and I'm dying. Like, I'm just like, something's just not right. And she just leaves me. She comes back, and now she's like, something might be really up. Like, we need to take you in. So this is Sunday night, probably around 11 o'clock at night. Finally get to the hospital. They do tests, and I have an appendicitis, and like, it's just not looking good. So they do, they perform surgery on it, and so it's Monday. It's by the time they do surgery, it's like Monday, 1-2 in the morning, whatever, and we play Utah that Saturday, and so I think it's Tuesday. I wake up from it, and I'm just kind of like trying to figure out where I'm at with regards to, the surgery, and they're like, "Yeah, you're not playing," and I'm like, "Yes, I am," and they're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "All right, we'll see." And so, for me, it was all mental. Like I was just like, if I don't take any pain medicine, I'll know how my body really feels. So I don't take any pain medicine. After the surgery, I'm just sitting there. It's hurting, but I'm like, if I can deal with the hurt, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
So I sneak out of the hospital Thursday and I go to the practice. And I'm just
picturing you like sneaking out the back door wearing your gown and you got, like your football helmet in your hand.
I totally sneak out of the hospital. And it wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't until Friday where I'm just like, no one's believing it. Stories are coming out that it was a fake. I didn't actually have surgery. There's other stories. People are like, his parents are idiots for letting him play in this game. And, you hear about them all after the fact. But, hey, we end up beating them.
Yeah, you had to keep rolling. You played very well.
I had a decent game, and my stitches ripped.
Yeah, you like bleeding through your shirt, right?
It was bleeding and whatnot, but...
You were like the original Kurt Schilling with the bloody sock, dude.
Nah, it's just, dude, there's just certain things that kind of define certain periods of your life. And I think that was one of those games for me, just playing after. And I didn't realize people don't do much after they have an appendectomy done. You
know what, though? You never regret the things you do in life later on. It's usually the things you didn't do that you end up regretting. So at the end of the day, absolutely, you would have so much regret if you hadn't played in that game and you just always knew, like, should have I, could have I played, No,
I played, and we won.
What was your career record versus Utah?
2-1.
2-1, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it should have been 3-0.
What was the game that you lost?
It was like 12-7.
Oh, that was McBride's last game. You just fumbled on the goal line.
Come on. But it's all right.
That's good. At least McBride got that out of it.
I know. But he still got fired.
He did.
If we would have still beat him.
In defense of Utah, they brought in Urban Meyer. That seemed like a good idea.
Whatever.
Well, fast forward, you end up going undrafted, but you get picked up by the Eagles. So you're playing for Andy Reid. What was your first impression of Coach Reid, or was there a moment when you knew like that you were going to make the team? Because undrafted rookie, there's no guarantees at that point. When did you know like I'm going to make this roster? I'm going to be in the NFL. It's still, for me, I think it's still surreal that I did 5 years in the NFL. I never got cut. Like I never had to experience that part in the NFL of getting cut, but I felt like I was going to get cut every day. Like always hanging over you.
Yeah. I always felt like I was the 55th player on the team and they only keep 53. And so you just go out and, I just made sure I stayed healthy. And any chance I got, I made plays. And any chance I got, I did. If you go back and look at the depth chart, I probably had a position in every single position outside of defense.
You were like the original Taysom Hill.
Exactly. Matter of fact, I got a message from Taysom when I was telling him, hey, good job. He's like, I'm just trying to do the Reno Mahe. Like, I'm like, you're doing it at a way higher level than I did. But it was just one of those things that I just felt like if I knew I belonged, but when you get there, you realize how good everyone is and how, it was just, but for me, I think staying healthy helped me. And then just being able to do the one job that no one wants to do.
Punt return?
Yeah. Nobody wants to do a punt return.
Especially back then. They didn't call the roughing quite as often. Now, if a dude were to level a guy, it would be much more, of a penalty than it was
now. If you
then.
Touch the guy, you can get a flag. Guys
I remember Nate Mickle getting killed against Arizona.
Yeah.
I literally was like, they're going to have to scrape his body off the field. But that is a position that just, I could never do it.
And I didn't really do it in college.
Yeah.
When I went there, it was my uncle Vai Sikahema, who was like, hey, if you want to get a crack at this, you better do punt return. I was like, man, I'd do anything to get that paycheck. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite moment from your time in the NFL? Like something that sticks out to you?
One funny one with Andy Reid. Actually, I got two funny ones with Andy Reid. One, very first preseason game. And it's my first NFL game. And I'm sitting there, and preseasons is when they let all the rookies go on. Yeah. And so I'm getting ready to go in at punt return. And Andy, the coaches, they cover their mouth and they're talking to you. So I'm standing next to him. I'm getting ready to go out to do punt return. And he's like, so you scared? I lied so bad. Nope. And I was so scared. But one other time I was sitting in meetings, speaking of BYU, Utah, and I'm texting with a couple guys at the game about the score during meetings, and BYU's winning. And so I text Andy Reid like, hey, BYU's up, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, awesome. Then he texts me back, shouldn't you be in meetings? And I was like, my bad, bye. But Andy was he's that kind of guy.
Yeah, what makes him because he's such a good coach. I think he's got one of those reputations. Everyone in the game just has so much respect for him. What was it that made him special as a coach?
I think it was something that I would assume he got from Coach LaVell as well, where it didn't matter if you're the janitor or the starting quarterback. You treated everyone with respect. And he ran that kind of organization. And he's someone I can text right now, and he'll text back. That you still matter regardless of where you are in life to him. And so that's to me. And when we started my daughter's foundation, he was totally willing to be on the board. So it's just, that's the kind of guy he is.
Well, let's touch bases a little bit on that. You spoke about your daughter's foundation, how Andy Reid agreed to be on the board. Back up, how many years ago did she pass away? Tell us what happened.
This will be year 2, second year? Yeah, this will be the second year next month.
And for those not familiar, do you mind talking a little bit about what happened and kind of what's come from that in your organization now?
No. More so the organization or what happened?
I guess first go through a little bit of what happened. So your daughter, how old was she?
She was 3.
Okay.
She was 3. I was actually practicing at BYU. It was crazy to think that I had accidentally left my phone in my pocket walking out to the indoor facility for practice. Coaches never take their phone out there. But for some reason that day I had my phone in my pocket. And I get a call from my wife that my daughter had an accident with the blinds cord and that they're life flighting her to Primary Children's in Salt Lake. So I ran off the field, told Kalani I had to run to the hospital. And I'm someone that usually leave my keys in the car. So I jump in the car and I'm going almost 150 down to the hospital. It was crazy. And you're crying on the way there. I was a little punk. I get to the hospital and she goes through all the testing, and then she had too much time went too long without her getting air to her brain. So after a while, a few days after all the different testing, they pronounced her brain dead. And so it was November 29th she passed. And so because it was so public, having been played in the NFL and coaching at BYU at the time, we had so many people that the love and support was just overwhelming. And so when everything kind of all settled and everything kind of was getting back to normal as much as it could be, my wife really wanted to give back for all the love and support. So we started a foundation called Miracles from Elsie. That was what I talked about with Andy Reid's on the board of directors, him, Vaisika Hema, and Sherry Dew, and me and my wife. And so we had our first function last year where we raised money for everything that helped us get through what we went through. So it was, whether it was more education on organ donation. I think the biggest for me personally with regards to my family was counseling. And then we were able to use some of the proceeds raised from the foundation dinner to sponsor families that have gone through the same situation we went through in losing a child to get counseling. And then we've got to go participate when they graduated. So it's just things my wife got to really, really enjoy. And then there's families that have, whether it's organ donation and they've had to go and the financial burden of going through that process, we're able to support that through the foundation. So,
yeah, I can't think of anything that I think would be harder than losing a child, especially, you have your other children as well. So you're trying to comfort them through that.
Right.
What was the hardest part of the whole thing? And how did you, I know you said you had all this support and everything, but day to day, how did you get through such a difficult moment?
I think the hardest part for me was going back to those places that me and Elsie would go on our daddy-daughter dates. That was hard. Any place that reminded me of certain memories with her, that was the hardest part, overcoming going to the grocery store, because me and her would always go sit at Harmon's here in Traverse. There's a spot we always go sit on our daddy-daughter. She loved going on daddy-daughter dates. The hardest part for me was she's one out of all my kids that liked me more than the mom. She was the only one. All my other kids are punks. But she was, and so that, outside of that, it was hard to go to hospitals again. It was hard to just be in a hospital. And so I was able to get over that when my last daughter a few months ago fell and hit her head and had to get life flighted to primary children's again. And so I had the opportunity to go back into Elsie's room that she was in. No one was in there, but me and my wife were able to go sit in there and be able to come to grips with it. But you said something earlier that has come up in multiple conversations. People saying that they can't think of anything harder you would go through than losing your child. I don't agree. Why I don't agree is because what we believe in, what I believe in, is that I'll be with Elsie again. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm excited for that. And that keeps me going, and that keeps me trying to live a good, right life.
Helps you have a bigger why.
Yeah, a bigger why, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and staying that course. I think it would be harder for me, and I think it would be harder as a parent. So I know that she doesn't have to deal with this life anymore and the struggles of this life. But I think it would be harder for me as a parent to see one of my other kids go through the struggle. And if they fall away from the beliefs that we have, and if I had a friend that I had talked to about that, and he said that he as I said that to him, he talked about going and visiting his daughter in jail. That would kill me. Like, that would hurt. I think that would hurt so much. Now, I miss my daughter, but I'm grateful to know that I will be with her again and that she doesn't have to go through this struggle. And so that's why we're good. We're good with where we are with her. And just now it's about honoring her legacy and doing more good on her behalf.
Has it helped you in any way, kind of just how you look at the fragileness of life and how you raise your other kids, as far as, like, it just brings things into perspective? Maybe work's not quite as important anymore, where your family time becomes that much more. Has it changed you in any way that way?
Well, I think I've always been greedy with my time, in the sense that I like spending time with my wife, with my kids. I want to do that more. But I think it has really made me take a step back and really assess what my goals are in life with regards to, I'm done chasing money. It's not the amount of money, it's what the money can afford me. Yeah. And so for me, my whole motto now is just chasing time. I just want as much time with my family as I can afford.
Yeah.
You know, you still got to be a productive citizen. You still got to go out there and work, and you know, whatever talents and gifts you have that you can monetize to give me more time. Like I mentioned earlier with my Uncle Vi, he taught me what you should spend your money on is vacations and education. And so
totally agree with that. It's great advice.
Yeah. So for me, it's more finding the financial to do that, to be able to find more time with my wife and kids and to decide on when I want to leave and don't want to leave.
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of times we assume, or adults, right, or parents especially, you kind of assume like, oh, my kids need all these different things. But at the end of the day, the things you remember from your own childhood are those little things where you were spending time together. Yeah. You know, I always say, like, I'll never complain about the life I have because I had a mom I knew always loved me, a dad I knew always loved me, and they both just seemed somehow, even I had 7 kids in my family, so we're like, you know, we were like our own little Tongan family. But they always seemed to make time for everything. And that to me was amazing. I don't know how they even did it, but those are the things as a kid that I think helped me know that I was, you know, life was okay. Life was good. And so I think it's important, like you said, you know, spend your time on those experiences, vacations, and education. I think that's valid.
No, that's where me and my wife are. And she gets to stay home with the kids. Mm-hmm. And we've always, no matter what our financial situation is, that was more important for her to stay home.
And so when's your new baby going to be here?
Baby number 9 is due next month.
Next month. Is boy or girl? Do you know yet?
Boy. So boys win. It was 4 boys, 4 girls. So the last one's a boy. And
so do you have any pressure to, like, because you were both star athletes, is there any pressure for you, for your kids, that you put on them to be great at sports? Or are they just like the world's greatest athletes or what? So
how about this? There was 1 week this summer with the 5 kids that could actually, so, you know, the oldest is on a mission. And then my 2 older girls were at a singing camp at BYU. And the 3 below them were at chess camp that week. And then my daughter Elsie obviously passed away. And then my youngest son, that's, you know, he's only 2. And so that week, my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, what? Wait, we have 2 kids at a singing camp, remix vocal at BYU, and 3 doing chess camp. And I was like, what has become of us? But you know, my wife said it best when I was trying to convince her to let my sons play tackle football. And she said, they don't have to. And I was like, it's a great point. Like, I had to play football. Mm-hmm. That was my ticket to change the course of my family. Mm-hmm. And she says, our kids don't have to. They can do whatever they want. They might want to play football, but they don't have to play football. And so,
well, what a great feeling to know that because of all the work you put in and all the effort, never giving up, that you have been able to provide a situation where your kids get to truly do whatever they want to do. Exactly. They don't have to do anything. Well, when you were done playing football, I know it's hard for a lot of people to decide what to do next. Was that a difficult transition for you? And how did you decide what to do?
Man, it was, talk about a life lesson. I mean, you thought getting kicked out of BYU was hard. So the hard part playing football is everybody knows how much you make. I mean, they print it in USA Today. It's in Madden football. I mean,
you ever play yourself in Madden?
I did here and there. I'm not much of a video game person, but I did here and there. I thought it was cool, but I grew up kind of frugal. Like I did, you know, I didn't care for things. I'm not much for fancy cars or whatever. And so we stashed a pretty good chunk of change after 5 years. But then you just get a target on your back. Everyone coming after, you know, your money and invest in this. You're supposed to diversify and put money here, put money there. And then not even a year later, you're broke. And all these investments, you know, when the housing market crashed, and
Oh man, I remember I was 24 years old, and it just felt like, well, when I started making money, and I was doing pretty well, and yeah, I mean, people just start coming out of the woodwork, right? And I didn't know at the time how to set up a boundary and how to protect myself. I just wanted to be nice to everybody. And so I'm meeting with all these people that I look back now and I'm like, what kind of jerk, screw some 24-year-old kid that's trying to hustle, it's so bad. But I mean, I invested in a dental clinic in Arizona that I don't think existed. $50,000, and I put money in what turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and it just makes me sad that people, so you really do need to learn and to protect yourself and how to say no to people, because I think everyone goes through that. I went through it. I lost the first couple $1,000,000 I made in real estate. I just gave it away to people that I didn't want to say no to.
No, it's tough, especially when it's family. For me, it was hard when it's family. Everyone has a situation, and you grew up with these people, and so, but at the end of the day, I don't think I would have changed it. These are the same people that are there for me.
So yours was more, you were helping people and supporting people?
Well, it was both.
Okay.
So you did both.
Yeah, sure.
But
your uncles, whatever.
And so going through bankruptcy, starting over. But when I look back at it, I think it was nice. I think it was a nice lesson, not only for me, but to ground your kids.
So you actually went through bankruptcy after you were done playing and made all that money in the NFL?
Yep.
Wow.
And so my wife had written about it in the Daily Herald about the Suburban getting repoed. Was the same feeling when we lost to Utah my first year coaching. She had compared the two, but it wasn't something that I was embarrassed about. It was something that I took as a challenge to find a way to provide for my family. I grew up broke. Mm-hmm. My wife laughs about saying my father-in-law joked about, I came with nothing and I still have most of it. and so we grew up broke, but I don't want to use that as an excuse. Mm-hmm. I
think understanding the times though, just everybody lost all their money.
No doubt.
Unless you were some of the smartest people in the world lost everything, right?
Yeah. They were jumping out of buildings.
There's no shame in it. I mean, it was the times that we were in.
I think some people that can't be honest with where they're at in their life, I think that delays their learning ability. So for me, it was, it wasn't something to hide. It was something that was it's reality. I remember getting up at church and I fast and testimony meeting, and I was like, look, I may think I played in the NFL, but we might lose our house. But I believe in tithing. That you still work, you pay a tithe and a generous fast offering, and things will work out. And I'm still in the house.
Well, I think a blessing that you had too is it's one thing for people to talk about money in ways when they either haven't had it or have had a lot, but you've had the whole spectrum where you lived as an NFL star and you lived where you're getting your Suburban repoed, right? And so you truly were able to see that it wasn't the money bringing you the happiness in your life. You're able to see that money simply, my whole rule on money is I always say, it just makes you more of whatever you are. So if you're happy, it'll make you more happy. If you're miserable, it's going to make you more miserable. But what were some of the lessons you learned having gone the full spectrum of money, both, rich and poor?
I think there's a responsibility. There's a huge responsibility when you have money. That it's a responsibility. And I think there are things I would do differently in the sense of, are you really helping? And so it's being a little bit mindful of that. But the next go around is, at least now, people won't know how much I'm making. I don't have to worry about that. If people are like, hey, what are you doing now? I'm in the trash business. I'm like, oh, well, that's great.
Go call the next guy.
Yeah. And so being able to live, I think I mentioned that to you. I don't know if I did. Sunday, I deleted all my social media.
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, I deactivated Twitter, deactivated Facebook, deactivated Instagram.
Well, I'll miss you, bud. Yeah.
But you can text me, though.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And so for me, it's going the other way. in a place where I want to really have that focus just be on my wife and kids.
I think that's smart. I mean, if you don't need it for a business tool, so, so many people get sucked into that. Is like, I use it a lot for business, and sometimes I wish I didn't have to, or I didn't. And, I probably can figure out ways to use it less and less. But I do think you're going to miss a lot of what life is bringing to you if you're stuck looking behind a screen, right? Yeah. And I think that it's just important to recognize that, and where you have done that now. And I'm actually anxious to hear. I'll have to follow up with you in a month and see how it's going.
Yeah, I just did it Sunday. So yesterday was the full day, and it was amazing how much more time I had focused on my kids. Like I preach about chasing time, but I chase time to have more time on social media, or am I really finding time to go with my kids to a movie yesterday, to Corn Belly? Like there's actual time to.
When you're actually present with them in those moments, right?
And so, and I'm not in a job like coaching where I'm have to be on Twitter, Snapchat with all these high school kids. Like, much more creepier can that be?
Did you have to Snapchat them and stuff? That was like part of the...
Yeah, and then there's just like, you have to do one every day because you want to see like how it was...
Oh man, you had to keep your streaks going with all the recruits.
I'm like, man, when I was growing up, if you had streaks, you had stains in your underwear. Like you didn't want streaks. These kids, they want these streaks. They want to snap with you. They want to tweet, DM. And I'm like, man, I want to spend time with my wife and kids. But then it just snapped Sunday where I'm just like, do I need it? Like where I'm at now professionally, and if things keep going the way it's going, no, I don't need it. The CEO of our company, he doesn't have it. And I'm like, do I want to be like him or I want to be like this? You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna just get away from it.
Dude, I think there's a lot of genius in that.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, you kind of last thing we'll touch on, because you did coach for 2 years at BYU. And you never really, you've told me this before, but you never really wanted to be a coach per se, right?
No, it was funny how it all worked out. When Kalani got hired, like I said earlier, he was, he's family. Yeah. Kalani's family. So he gets hired. A bunch of us are at BYU, and I had a chance to sit down with him. It's like, dude, if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. Because people probably don't put much on it, but like for me, I'm grateful to be an American. I love America. I was born here. Culturally, I grew up in a Tongan home in LA. I might have grown up in the hood, but in the house, it was a Tongan home. And I take pride in where my parents come from and coming to America for the opportunity we have. And Kalani being the first Tongan head coach, you take pride in that you want him to succeed. You want him to really do well. And so I just happened to sit down with him one day while he's going through the process of just being hired and having to put a staff together. And I was just like, man, if there's anything I can do to help you out, just let me know. So I get a call from him one day, and he's like, I was thinking you should, apply for the running back job. But I was getting courted to coach back when I was finishing up in Philly. And I just was not a fan of that lifestyle. But Kalani had promised my wife that, he'd get us home, that it won't be like these other places. And he held up his end. But after everything that happened with my daughter, I still felt like I needed to take a different road. And we didn't have a very good year last year, and it just kind of worked out that way, and things had to get shaken up. And
yeah, they basically made everybody reapply, right?
Reapply, and so it was kind of a good segue to. But it worked out. It worked out the best for everyone. I think Kalani and them, he's got some guys in there that are doing a great job, and I have more control over my time. And as far as work, I get to just work from home, work from my phone, and it's been great.
That's awesome, man. Well, I am sad that we won't be able to keep our Snapchat streak alive. But, dude, I'm looking forward to many more adventures and following your path, not on social media, but by text message and phone call. So,
appreciate it.
Dude, you're a stud, man. That was fun. Thank you. Keep it up.